Bloomberg campaign pollster Doug Schoen. You know, Doug, when you hear stuff like that or these tapes that come marching out of the past, almost cued like a Pez dispenser, do you just say, oh boy, I've got a tough day today?
No, you say that the opponents across the board are doing everything they can to hit Mike. Some of what is being released is taken out of context. Some of it is a straightforward assessment, analysis of difficult problems, and some of it, like his advocacy of stop and frisk, he is repudiated, he's apologized for it, and has outlined a very, very aggressive criminal justice
to have to clarify remarks he made. So a lot of people are saying, we know you've hopped between parties, you know, over the past, but you hop between positions as well. That is he trustworthy?
I have worked for and with Mike for 22 years. I would tell you he's one of the most trustworthy people I've met in my life.
So how do you advise him on this? You're a pretty straight shooter in your own right, Doug. So how do you advise him? We've got some problems here. The more these pop up and the more you have to apologize or clarify your position, the more problems you have.
Well, he's at 19% in a poll released today.
By the way, that poll, I saw that, not to jump on you, but is that post a lot of this release or prior?
Yeah, it was done through the weekend and Monday. So, look.
So he's absorbing these body blows.
He's absorbing them and going up. And, you know, I don't think the voters sit the way we do, Neil, parsing every release of every tape, trying to judge what he said 10 years ago in the context of today. I just don't think
I just think what they're doing, and you're the expert here, but that they're trying to sort of get a position or framing a story about Michael Bloomberg that you can't trust what he says. How do you, as his pollster, counter that?
Well, he's getting very high favorable ratings in our polling, but certainly the public polling. 70-odd% of the American people, or the Democrats, like Mike Bloomberg. And
he's going to be at Pinata tomorrow night. Well, how do you deal with that?
I think he's going to answer back. He's a straight shooter, and he is credible and candid, and I think he's going to tell you what he thinks, and I think let the chips fall where they may.
You know, Bernie Sanders' support, which is not quite the same story here, but the dirty little secret is he is surging.
Yes, he is.
And people lose sight of that, which lends me to believe that maybe that's the unwritten story and the bigger worry for Michael Bloomberg.
It is a very big worry for certainly Mike Bloomberg, but I think for every Democrat, because I think if Bernie Sanders is the nominee, he will almost certainly lose. The Democrats.
You know, they used to say that about Donald Trump if he were the nominee.
Well, I would say the polling always showed that he had a real shot, particularly against Hillary. But I don't really think
he leads in national polls against Donald Trump.
He does, but let's just wait till Bernie's ideas get exposed. Neil, I don't think there are too many Democrats who took their honeymoon in the Soviet Union and praised the social arrangements of socialism to this day and communism in the past.
Maybe they went for the architecture. We just don't know.
Well, I've seen the architecture. I can recommend a lot better places than
real quick,
Moscow.
Help me with this in the latest thing. He wants to prove as a former Wall Street he can go after Wall Street. I get that. But is it your sense, if he ever became president, that he would just be like any other of these candidates, raising taxes, going after wealthy people, and there's not much of a difference there?
No, I think there's a real difference. I think the fact that Mike is looking for some greater oversight of banks when we've had problems since 2011 is a fair and reasonable position. He makes decisions on the merits. I've never seen Mike enter into a political judgment about his policy orientation. So I think he'd be very different, and I think he'd be a terrific president.
Do you think Donald Trump fears him the most?
I think it is absolutely certain he fears him the most. Mike Bloomberg is an honest-to-God mega billionaire. He has proven to be willing to spend his money to tell his story. And you've seen he's been going toe-to-toe with Trump, both in terms of the issues and, frankly, when Trump's wanted to on the insults. So I think it's going to be a real...
Are you saying he would get down in the gutter and trade insults?
I'm saying that when Trump has attacked, he's responded, whatever it takes, Neil.
And you'd advise him to do that?
I would tell him that with Donald Trump, you have to fight fire with fire.
Okay. We'll watch it very closely. Good seeing you again, my friend.
Neil, thank you.
Doug Schoen.